Hello, friends and fellow bibliophiles. Welcome back to Kat's Novel Adventures. In the spirit of Victober, I am doing the Victorian Literature Journey Tag. I was tagged by Roz at Scally Dandling about the book. She has a terrific channel, and I was excited to get tagged by her. I will leave a link to her channel as well as to her Victorian Literature Journey Tag video in the description box below. Let's dive into the questions, shall we? Question number 1. What was your first experience reading Victorian literature, and how was it? My first experience was as a teenager. I read both Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, and I remember getting lost in both of those stories, hours of reading, and really enjoying them. Question number 2. Has the reading of a Victorian book ever brought you to tears? If so, tell us more. Yes, I have been brought to tears, and the book responsible for that was Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. I love the book, but it has an extremely heartbreaking ending, and it made me cry. Question number 3. Are there any people who have played a significant role in your Victorian literature journey? I have to admit that my Victorian literature journey really is just beginning, and with the exception of Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, which I sought out as a teenager, I guess most of the literature that I have read has really been what was assigned to me in high school by my English teachers, as well as my son's English teachers. So I guess I should say they had a significant role in introducing me to Victorian literature in general. And then with being on BookTube and having this renewed interest in Victorian literature, I'd have to say Kate Howe, as well as Mitzi at Mitzi Reads and Writes, and perhaps even Roz, who tagged me. Question number 4. Do you have a favorite film or TV adaptation of a Victorian book? What about one you'd like to see made? Yes, my favorite is Bram Stoker's Dracula, 1992, starring Gary Oldman as Dracula. It was directed by Francis Ford Coppola. It also stars Keanu Reeves as Jonathan Harker, Winona Ryder as Mina, and Sir Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing. I absolutely love this movie, love the choice of Gary Oldman as Dracula. He did such a wonderful job. It is so atmospheric, and it has all the gothic vibes, which I love. As far as an adaptation of a book that I'd like to see made, my answer originally was The Way We Live Now by Anthony Trollope, because while reading it, I thought the whole time this would make a great movie. Well, I just found out on Victober Sprints that there is a mini-series, and I am excited to know that because I want to watch it as soon as I finish the book. Question number 5. Which character in Victorian literature most resembles you or you identify with most? This is a tough question. 1, because I haven't read tons of Victorian literature, and 2, I don't think I really identify with many of the female characters because of some of their decisions that they make. Some of them are a little too perfect, and some of them are a little too flawed. I'm somewhere in the middle, but don't laugh. I'm gonna go with Mrs. Cratchit from A Christmas Carol. I just feel like I'm a mom. I love my family. I love being in the home. I like doing things that have to do with my children and my family. And she's a nice gal, so I'm gonna go with Mrs. Cratchit. Question number 6. Do you have a favorite moment, scene, or line from Victorian literature? Tell us about it or read it to us. The moment I want to share with you comes from one of my favorite Victorian literature books, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. The moment I want to share with you is right after Marley has explained to Scrooge that he will be visited by 3 ghosts, and this is what transpires afterwards. The apparition walked backward from him, and at every step he took, the window raised itself a little, so that when the specter reached it, it was wide open. He beckoned Scrooge to approach, which he did, and when they were within 2 paces of each other, Marley's ghost held up his hand, warning him to come no nearer. Scrooge stopped, not so much in obedience as in surprise and fear. For on the raising of the hand, he became sensible of confused noises in the air, incoherent sounds of lamentation and regret, wailings inexpressibly sorrowful and self-accusatory. The specter, after listening for a moment, joined in the mournful dirge and floated out upon the bleak dark night. Scrooge followed to the window, desperate in his curiosity. He looked out. The air was filled with phantoms wandering hither and thither in restless haste and moaning as they went. Every one of them wore chains like Marley's ghost. Some few, they might be guilty governments, were linked together. None was free. Many had been personally known to Scrooge in their lives. He had been quite familiar with one old ghost in a white waistcoat, with a monstrous iron safe attached to his ankle, who cried piteously at being unable to assist a wretched woman with an infant, whom he saw below upon a doorstep. The misery with them all was clearly that they sought to interference for good in human matters, and had lost the power forever. Whether these creatures faded into mist or mist enshrouded them, he could not tell, but they and their spirit voices faded together, and the night became as it had been when he walked home. Scrooge closed the window and examined the door by which the ghost had entered. It was double locked, as he had locked it with his own hands, and the bolts were undisturbed. He tried to say humbug, but stopped at the first syllable, and being from the emotion he had undergone, or the fatigues of the day, or his glimpse of the invisible world, or the dull conversation of the ghost, or the lateness of the hour, which in need of repose went straight to bed without undressing and fell asleep on the instant. I just love that, because it really sets the tone of that Scrooge accepts the message, but then at the same moment he wants to say humbug because there's a part of him that doesn't want to believe, because it's so much unknown that's about to embrace him. Question number 7. Does any Victorian literature intimidate you? If so, what and why? Initially, I was intimidated by the group read for Victober, which is The Way We Live Now by Anthony Trollope, because it is a chunker. However, the host kindly created a schedule for the entire month, and despite the fact that I am a little bit behind, it does help with pacing yourself. And I am determined I'm going to try to finish it before the end of October. The only other thing I would have to say, it's not really intimidation, it's just that I think I don't gravitate towards Victorian literature very readily, and that is because I feel like I have to have the time to focus and concentrate on what I'm reading because of the language. But I don't know, for the most part I'm not too intimidated. Question number 8. What tips would you give someone early on in their Victorian literature journey? Think about what genre you enjoy reading normally, and then seek that out in a Victorian literature book, because you will find all genres spread across Victorian literature, from horror to romance to science fiction and many more. And then also, don't be intimidated by the size of some Victorian literature books, because not all of them are chunky. In fact, Tiffany over at Beautiful Minutia released a video where she recommends some shorter works of Victorian literature. I will link her channel as well as that video in the description box below. Question number 9. What is your top recommended read for other readers of Victorian literature? I love many different genres, but one of my favorites is horror, so I like to recommend Dracula by Bram Stoker. I love this book for so many reasons, but it's very atmospheric. It's told in a series of letters and journal entries, as well as newspaper articles. It's got those gothic vibes all throughout, wonderful characters, and it is perfect for the spooky season. Number 10 is not really a question. It's basically to tag people. So I'm tagging Miriam at Miriam Elizabeth Reads, Mitzi at Mitzi Reads and Writes, and Faye at Faye L. I had a lot of fun doing this tag. Thanks again, Roz, for tagging me. Also, thanks everyone for watching. I hope you really enjoyed this video and my answers to my journey with Victorian literature. In the meantime, stay amazing and be adventurous.